2016 has been a crazy year for politics, from Ted Cruz being outed as the Zodiac Killer to Bernie Sanders earning a respectable 200% of the under 30 vote. Jokes aside, we've seen some unprecedented developments in this year's presidential race. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton both have historic unfavorability ratings, and both candidates have had more than their fair share of controversies. It stands to reason that American voters hate both choices. It seems clear that both Hillary and Trump are